Good morning. I'm Mike Van Dusen, Deputy Director of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's Directors Forum with Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Sergei Stanishev. Lee Hamilton, the President and Director of the Center, regrets that he cannot be here. He was called to the White House for a meeting of the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board this morning. Established by an act of Congress in 1968, the Woodrow Wilson Center is the nation's official living memorial to President Woodrow Wilson. It was founded to honor and build upon his legacy as a man who bridged the divide between scholarship and public policy. We bring together the thinkers and the doers, policymakers, scholars, business leaders, in the hope and belief that a frank and open dialogue will lead to better understanding, cooperation, and public policy. I want to acknowledge the role of the Center's Southeast Europe project in helping the East European Studies program in bringing together today's event. We appreciate their leadership in important areas of public policy. Bulgaria's development since the collapse of communism and the end of the Cold War has been both challenging and remarkable. Its place in the international community of democracy is a great credit to its people. Sofia has been a staunch NATO ally since 2004 and joined the European Union in 2007. We deeply appreciate the support Bulgaria has given to efforts to stabilize Iraq. Today, our guest, like Woodrow Wilson, has bridged the divide between scholarship and public service. Prime Minister Stanishev received his doctorate in history from Moscow State University in 1989, a transformative year in Eastern Europe and around the world. As a historian, as a journalist, as a foreign policy thinker, and as a public servant, Prime Minister Stanishev has experienced and steered Bulgaria's progress in the post-Cold War world. Whether working regionally to preserve peace and stability in Kosovo, as he did 1 month ago at a meeting of the Balkan leaders in Sofia, or whether increasing Bulgaria's troop commitment to the vital fight against al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan, Prime Minister Stanishev has repeatedly demonstrated strong leadership on the most challenging of issues. In 2001, he was elected to the 39th National Assembly as a member of the Bulgarian Socialist Party. He went on to serve as chairman of the party's Supreme Council and then as its leader. He guided his party to full membership in the Socialist International in 2003 and to the Party of European Socialists in 2005. The Bulgarian Parliament elected him Prime Minister in 2005. Mr. Prime Minister, we look forward to your comments. Welcome to the Woodrow Wilson Center.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and I really feel honored to be a guest of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, an institution which is really committed to our common values of democracy, human rights, prosperity, and transatlantic cooperation. Well, it is a great challenge to speak in front of such an audience in the institution which is having the name of one of the most prominent American presidents, who indeed bridged science, scholarship, and policy. And it's good to remember a very significant words of President Wilson, who said, interests do not tie always nations together. Sometimes they separate them, but sympathy and understanding unite them. And I believe that this is one of the major missions of the Center, where I have the honor to present some of my views on the situation in Southeastern Europe, the Black Sea area, and the role of my country, Bulgaria, which is really in a key position between the Western Balkans and the broad Black Sea region. These regions have always been, and I believe are becoming even more important for Europe, for stability, peace in that broad region. Of course, you're well aware that historically the Balkans, Southeastern Europe, haven't always been the most peaceful area in Europe. On the contrary, usually the connotations to that region have been that this is the soft underbelly of Europe, the powder keg, many other words which are not creating the best image of the region. And the reality is that even in modern times, from the establishment of the new independent states in that region from 19th century, it was predominantly history of wars, conflicts, territorial disputes, ethnic and even religious clashes. And I'm very glad that if you look objectively, impartially at the developments in the recent years, you can really see the difference. The difference in the change of intergovernmental relations, in promoting cooperation, in promoting peace and stability. It is not an easy path because even in the 1990s we witnessed a number of conflicts due to the falling apart of former Yugoslavia, and this shift of policies, and which is even more important, shift in the mentality and in the attitudes, not only of the governments but also of the peoples, is really impressive. I would like to stress that it wouldn't be possible actually without the very strong commitment of a number of international factors, namely NATO, the European Union, the OSCE, and many other participants, in order to change that negative history and heritage from the past. As a result of all these changes, which are really visible, because if you look at the geography of the region, you now have 3 countries of Southeast Europe who are members of the European Union and 4 countries members of NATO. But if you look at that, it brings that approach to Europe, which is more stable, democratic, prosperous, and hopefully more secure in many senses of this word. Bulgaria, in the last 18 years, from the beginning of our democratic transition and market reforms, has always been an active proponent of an enhanced integration of the whole region into the European Union and NATO. And indeed, as it was mentioned, my country became both member of the North Atlantic Alliance in 2004, and since early 2007, we are also members of the European Union. This was not an easy path for Bulgaria. We had turbulent times, we had ups and downs, we had to work very hard in implementing all democratic standards and European standards, not only in legislation but in the work of the institutions, in the attitudes in our society. And I really believe that Bulgarian people have the credit for what has been achieved by the country through plenty of sacrifice, humbleness, through hard work of all Bulgarian citizens. We now are doing our best to share our experience in this process in order to assist, to help our neighbors, both to the west and to the east, across the Black Sea, in order to help them to conduct the same reforms, to explain to them our experiences, both positive and negative, and indeed to do something what is, I think, of paramount importance for the whole region, to strengthen the process of its integration to Euro-Atlantic institutions and organizations. And I'm very glad that the last NATO summit, this approach of comprehensive security indeed prevailed, and 2 of the countries from the Western Balkans, namely Albania and Croatia, received their invitations to join the alliance. Unfortunately, due to the dispute on the name, the Republic of Macedonia, another neighbor of Bulgaria, did not receive this invitation, but I'm glad that our insistence that once the negotiations on the name issue will be resolved, this country should be immediately invited to NATO, and I hope that they will be able, after the elections which were just held, to form a stable government, negotiate with Greece, with the very important role of the United States, which from my point of view is paramount in this process, come to a reasonable agreement and catch up. Because otherwise this country might face many more challenges, both economic, political, and in the relations between the different communities. And this would be a very dangerous process, not only for the Republic of Macedonia, but for the whole region. I'm personally very satisfied that the two countries who received their invitations indeed made a remarkable progress in their reforms. However, also basing on our experience, I can say that it is always important not just to relax after one stage of reforms, but on the contrary, to strengthen them and to continue them even in a faster path. With regard to the European Union, my country, even before our accession to EU, has always been insisting that without a clear European perspective, it would be very difficult to overcome the heritage not only of the Cold War, but of the conflicts in former Yugoslavia, which happened in the 1990s. And we are strongly supporting the Thessaloniki agenda, which was adopted by the European Union in 2003. And we understand, of course, that it is not an easy, sometimes it's a bumpy process of integration, but the greatest mistake would be to have great vagueness and to create the impression that the enlargement process will stop for indefinite period of time due to internal problems in the European Union. And Bulgaria has always supported these efforts. There are a number of concrete steps in which Bulgaria actively participated, namely the signing of a stabilization and association agreement with Serbia, which happened recently just at the eve of parliamentary elections. And I think it proved to be a very wise move, a very wise political decision of the European nations, because it helped the democratic forces in Serbia impose the integration agenda in the debates. And it led to a success of the Democratic Party, but also it proved that most of the Serbs, irrespectively of the very painful question of Kosovo for every Serb national, are thinking about their future integration into the European Union, about their living standard, about promoting democracy, and it was a remarkable sign. Of course, I cannot avoid the issue of the independence of Kosovo, which is, of course, at the top of the political agenda, not only of the countries in the region, but also the European Union, the whole international community, because it is a very sensitive issue. It is a very dividing issue for many countries. But I think that, again, in this case, Bulgaria's role was constructive, very balanced, and corrective from the point of view not only of stability of Kosovo, but the whole region. Because there might be many arguments on the issues of international law, because we are aware that there are different principles which contradict to each other, which actually clash. But Kosovo is a very unique case. We, as a country, were very supportive to the mission of Mr. Ahtisaari initially, which is the only available comprehensive plan about Kosovo, not only from the point of view of the status, which is always in the focus of the media, the analysts and the politicians, of course, but from the point of view of standards and the comprehensive development of Kosovo as an independent country. We consider that the only way to guarantee the stability, prosperity of Kosovo for every citizens who live there historically is, again, through a very strong presence of the international community. UNMIK, KFOR, and now, since recently also the European Rule of Law Mission, which is well known as EULEX. Because only through a commitment of all these institutions and organizations, positive things can happen in Kosovo. And it cannot happen only through guaranteeing security and elementary stability, because it is not sufficient. But we believe, as a member of the International Steering Group, that the international body should focus not only on the economic development of the country, but also on the building up of all political capacities and real civil society in Kosovo. It will take, I guess, many years to achieve this result, in order this result to be tangible, and it requires a permanent attention of the international factors, because I must stress that sometimes the international community is focusing on one issue, spending a lot of money, political efforts, resources, military presence, legal assistance, and many other things on, let's say, like it's in the case of Kosovo, and then shifting to another issue without steadily resolving the situation and leaving behind an area which is still potentially not very stable. And I would like to stress that apart from Kosovo, there is a number of issues in the Western Balkans which require a strong international commitment, like the development of Bosnia and Herzegovina. There are a number of successes in their integration process, in the internal reform, in the promoting of stability of this country divided by history in 1990s, but still a long way to go. I would also like to stress, as I did to a certain extent at the beginning, on the importance of international regional cooperation in the region. Because without this phenomena, we could not really speak about Euro-Atlantic and European integration of all these countries. Because it's up to the model. The countries of the region have to prove that we are able to resolve our old conflicts, our contradictions, the different interests through dialogue, looking for common interests, looking for the common development of the whole region. Because actually this is the European model, this is the European approach. Without it, the Germans and the French would never stop fighting for Alsace and Lorraine. And I think that this example is very important for the countries of the region. And as I said, this trend is strongly breaking through and getting force and getting understanding, not only in the political elites, but among people of the region. And I can say with pride that Bulgaria has always been a champion in this process. Just to remind that the process of regional cooperation started in Sofia. It was launched in 1996 by Bulgaria with a very strong international participation. And we have always defended this line of development of the whole region. And I'm satisfied that now, gradually, not without difficulties, we are coming to regional ownership of the cooperation in our region, Southeastern Europe. It happens through the process of cooperation in Southeastern Europe, which, from my point of view, is the major political forum and instrument of this cooperation, and the recently established Regional Cooperation Council, which was finalized this process of phasing out from the Stability Pact into RCC during the Bulgarian chairmanship in office of the SEECP. And we consider it a really important success of our country and prove that our diplomacy, our relations with the neighbors can develop this process. Because recently in Pomoria, when we had the summit finalizing Bulgaria's chairmanship in office, it was not an easy task to take together the representatives of Serbia, Kosovo, Greece, the Republic of Macedonia, and come out with a common declaration in the end. But it is working. It is not an easy process again, but it is a successful one. Another area, I think quite naturally, of special interest for Bulgaria And an area where my country could offer valuable input in the Black Sea region is the Black Sea region. And I think it's also very natural, because if you look at the geography, Bulgaria is a natural gateway, both of the European Union and NATO, towards this region, which is becoming strategically even more important in the early years of the 21st century. And we understand that the stability of this region is an indispensable part of the area of Euro-Atlantic security and prosperity. And I believe that the potential of the Black Sea, which has for many years been, so to say, abandoned and not in the focus of the international relations, is still to be disclosed and still to be felt by all international factors. From this point of view, I can say again that Bulgaria is one of the active factors in the neighborhood policy and Black Sea policy of the European Union. Just to mention the new initiative of the European Commission, the Black Sea Synergy, which was elaborated with a very strong expertise and input of my country, and which is indeed a very strong initiative uniting the issues of political cooperation, infrastructure, human contacts, and many other elements, because only a comprehensive strategy, especially of the European Union towards the Black Sea area, can guarantee this stability. And we have, of course, always defended in the European Union the attitude that actually the neighborhood policy should be well balanced between the Mediterranean dimension, which is the traditional one, the most developed, and the new dimension towards our neighbors to the east, Russia, Ukraine, the countries of the Black Sea area, and indeed through a very comprehensive strategy. Otherwise, if we do not do this, we are risking again another region which is capsulated in itself with many frozen conflicts, unresolved conflicts like the ones in Transnistria, Abkhazia, southern Ossetia, and with many tensions between the countries. So, as I already said, Bulgaria, through its diplomacy, good neighborly relations, trade cooperation, many other instruments, is doing our best to assist this process of mutual understanding, mutual dialogue. Because even if you have a conflict, you have to discuss it, you have to speak on it, you have to listen to the other position in order to resolve it in a reasonable way, without countries or peoples who would feel themselves losers, because this would be a very negative effect in the longer run. We have all seen it, what happened after the First World War, through such approaches, when Germany was humiliated, and in many other cases. I think it is a very important principle of international diplomacy in the modern world, that without looking for a win-win situations, without looking for a reasonable compromise, you cannot achieve really comprehensive stability in the areas of conflict. I could name a number of concrete Bulgarian initiatives in the area of the Black Sea, namely the fact that Bulgaria's most precise recent contribution to the security and stability of the Black Sea region is the International Black Sea Border Control, Coordination and Information Center. Bulgaria stands ready to host the office of the Energy Community Observatory in our territory, and a number of other initiatives. Let me briefly touch upon important fields where Bulgaria believes the efforts of the different actors should converge and be effectively pursued in order to achieve the security goals of the Transatlantic community in regard to the Black Sea region. One, of course, is democracy, respect for human rights and good governance. Because although the countries have subscribed to common values and standards, when dealing with the Black Sea region, we can witness that the level of this commitment, the level of democratic development, is not even in all countries. It differs according to history, concrete situations, former conflicts, instabilities, or something else. So it really requires common effort, and Bulgaria is contributing actively in the common Euro-Atlantic experience in the Black Sea region. Secondly, of course, trade and economic cooperation. And here the European Union, which neighbors the region of the Black Sea, has a very substantial role as trade partner. We should strongly support the economic integration of the countries from the region to the European Union, extending trade links, investments, and infrastructural projects through the many instruments which exist. And thirdly, the cooperation in the field of energy security. Energy security is becoming one of the top, actually, international issues in the recent years. Since 2006, the European Union is really promoting a common energy policy. It is not an easy process. We are at the beginning, but nevertheless, already in 2007, we took a number of very important decisions on renewables, on the reduction of CO2 emissions and many other issues. And of course, one of the areas where Bulgaria can be a strong contributor to the European security in energy field are the different infrastructural projects, which logically, and not only due to geography, but also to the political behavior of my country, can and are developed through the territory of Bulgaria, like Burgas-Alexandroupolis oil pipeline, like Nabucco, like Southern Stream. And I believe that all these projects have their potential, their economic potential, their political potential, their potential in the area of security. And I do not think that it is a coincidence that so many actors, both suppliers and consumers of energy, have chosen Bulgaria to go through our territory and implement these projects, because the country is politically stable, economically growing very rapidly. Bulgaria is a very loyal contributor to the common NATO agenda, not only in Europe, in many other parts of the world, including Afghanistan, and also a very active, although new, member of the European Union, because we understand that a relatively small country like Bulgaria can only be successful if our common family, the European Union, will be successful, will be active, transparent, democratic, and of course efficient. And from this point of view, this is another area where Bulgaria is having its own contribution to the common Euro-Atlantic security. In conclusion, let me summarize just in a sentence the main objectives of the Bulgarian policy role in Southeast Europe and the Black Sea region. It is one dedicated to building confidence, economic prosperity, stability and security, when keeping strong the Euro-Atlantic perspective and adherence to its democratic standards. We believe that the active involvement of the European Union and NATO in the process in both regions would optimize the existing efforts for strengthening regional cooperation in the security domain, as much of its potential has not so far been fully utilized. I could, of course, mention a number of other priorities for Bulgaria, but let me conclude here because actually I'm looking forward for the more interesting part of our meeting. This is the question and answers session, and I hope there will be enough questions so I could comment on them, because it's always more challenging and inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. I think we have a good 10 to 15 minutes for questions, and the floor is open. There are two microphones on the right and the left. The gentleman in the striped shirt will be number 1. And then we got 2 or 3 over here. Yep.
I think you're right to draw attention to the way that Bulgaria has contributed to stability and diffusing conflict in the Western Balkans and the Black Sea region. But I think the efforts that you will make in these vital spheres in the future will also depend on the internal evolution of Bulgaria. Now, several diplomats and members of the European Union who were engaged in the EU enlargement process said a rather disquieting thing to me. I'm someone who's just written a book on the enlargement process. My name is Tom Gallagher. I'm attached to the National Endowment for Democracy. And they said that there were 2 levels of power in Bulgaria. There was a transparent one where very progressive, European-minded, democratic people exercised a role, but underneath there was a second echelon of power where bigger decisions were made concerning issues like concerning energy, privatization, justice, and that those people behind the scenes were not accountable. And would you accept that there is a sort of dual structure of power in Bulgaria, and that those forces underneath the surface could possibly impair the contribution that many in Bulgaria, civil society, the bureaucracy which has been reformed, the armed forces want to make to Bulgaria's role in stabilizing Europe?
Starting out with the easy ones.
No, let me have a
go ahead. Do you want to take one more?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, we'll take a
all
second
of them,
one.
possibly, and try to reply to all of them.
Lambros Papandoniou, Greek correspondent. Mr. Prime Minister, since you mentioned FYROM, I'm wondering, with Bulgaria now a member of both NATO and the European Union, can you share with us your perspective on Bulgaria's position regarding the issue of the so-called Macedonian identity, ethnicity and language, which dominates the dispute between Athens and Skopje over the name of the country to Bulgaria's west? Thank you.
You got that. And then I'll take 2 more right here in the center. Yeah.
I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for his remarks. My name is Georgi Popstefanov, and I represent the United Macedonian Diaspora here in Washington, D.C. You listed democracy and human rights at the top of your list of important fields to focus on. Well, in 2005, the European Court of Human Rights ruled against Bulgaria in the case of Stankov and the United Macedonian organization Kneeling versus Bulgaria, stating that Bulgaria has violated the right of freedom of association and assembly of the Macedonian minority, and urged Bulgaria to register this party. To this day, Bulgaria has failed to register the political party of Macedonians and continues to negate the existence of a fairly sizable minority. When do you foresee Bulgaria implementing this decision, and when do you see officially recognizing the Macedonian minority? Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more, and then you can yeah, Rafi.
Compared to the other question, this one is going to be very easy, I promise you that. I want to inquire about the relationship between Bulgaria and Russia, and how you foresee the present president in Russia. Is this a real reshuffle in Russia, in your opinion?
Sorry?
Is there a real reshuffle in Russia, or it's more of the same? And how do you foresee the relationship between the 2 countries? Thank you.
Okay.
You can do it from here if you want.
No, I prefer to stand there, so I could see the audience better. Well, the first issue of the internal evolution of Bulgaria. I have also heard many times this, not accusation, but analysis about the different centers of power. The legitimate one, which is elected by the Bulgarian citizens, and the shadowy. Okay, let's roll back to the early 90s, when indeed, I must say, organized crime in Bulgaria flourished and developed. There were a number of reasons for this. One of them, for example, is the Yugo embargo. The Yugoslav embargo, because it strongly created an incentive for smuggling, for organized crime, and this is a reality. And another issue is the fact that the Bulgarian transition, from my point of view, was one of the most chaotic and politicized. Politicized beyond the common sense. Many public institutions were weakened as institutions just in order to purge former members of the Communist Party from these institutions. And perhaps it was an inevitable part of Bulgarian transition. But in reality, many people from the Ministry of Interior, from the judiciary, went out of the systems. Some of them changed sides, and this is part of modern Bulgarian history. We went through many turbulences in our development, but what is very clear for me is the path of Bulgarian development. Our civil society is becoming stronger and stronger, and no politician can ignore it. No one can ignore the independent media, no one can ignore the positions of the NGOs, and the visible side, the legitimate power, is getting stronger. And I will tell you the major instrument of this positive change in the last 10 years. It is mainly the process of European accession, even before our membership. The implementation of European standards in legislation, in the practice of the institutions, in the practice of the business communities. It also led to a lightening of the whole economic and political life in Bulgaria. Yes, of course, there are people in Bulgaria who still prefer the previous part of Bulgarian democratic transition, when in the muddy water it was very easy to catch a fish and make your business. But it is becoming definitely weaker and weaker, and from this point of view, I think that this government made a lot of reforms which are leading towards this. Reforms in the judiciary system, reforms in the security system, including the establishment of a new state agency for national security, which has several missions, including fight against organized crime and corruption. And although established in January this year, it already has a number of concrete operations. One who has worked in public institutions knows how difficult it is to establish a new agency in a few months and make it operable. It's almost a heroism of the people who work there to make it and to conduct international operations, like on money laundering, for quite big sums of money, by the way. And Bulgaria is going through a difficult period of our adjustment to the European Union. It is not easy, and miracles cannot happen in 6 months or even 1 year. But definitely, I think that Bulgaria's membership in the Union is a success story, and we are proving to be responsible. We are proving to continue with the reforms needed for the improvement of our society. And all the reforms in justice and home affairs are not made because the European Commission is expecting, but because it is needed for Bulgaria, for our successes. We have a success story in our economic development. Last year, the economic growth was 6.2%, and this is a steady level of economic growth for the last 3 years. The foreign direct investments were 6.1 billion euro for a country with 7.7 million people, one of the leaders in the whole European Union from the point of view of foreign direct investments. And this year, the indicators are even better. Economic growth for the first quarter is 7%. Data just recently released. And inflation is reducing in the recent months quite substantially. So these are just facts. And we know that Bulgaria cannot be, the European Union cannot make compromises on Bulgaria. We live in one community with same standards. But I always ask to compare Bulgaria to Bulgaria. 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and then answer the question, is there a clear progress? Is Bulgaria becoming more and more European in every standard? And I believe it is a fact. all what we ask is a fair treatment, not with standards different from the other countries. And we shall continue our efforts, not only until the end of this mandate, but I believe that Bulgarian society is mature enough to guarantee this political stability and democratic development of the country in the next years to come as well. Then the two next questions were, of course, interrelated and reflecting positions which are very opposite. And I think this is part of our heritage, of our old attitudes. You know, I will reply to you the following way. My grandmother has been born in Kilkis nowadays, which is in Greece. My father was born in Strumica at a time when it was part of the kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes. So I could be both historically Greek, Macedonian or Bulgarian. My family moved to Bulgaria only in 1930s from persecutions because they considered themselves Bulgarians. My point is that we can have many reasons and arguments to quarrel and fight and to have problems unresolved, pending. But this doesn't help anyone. Neither the Greeks, nor the citizens of the Republic of Macedonia, no Bulgarians, no Serbs. We have to learn not only to live together in peace, but also to develop cooperation. And I would call both to the Republic of Greece and Republic of Macedonia, indeed, once the elections in Macedonia are over, to facilitate and start the negotiations again on the name issue. Regarding identity, it's, according to Bulgarian constitution, it's in the right of every individual to declare himself Bulgarian, Roma, Turk, or whoever. This is a natural democratic right of every citizen. But do not forget, please, that in Bulgaria we have an independent judiciary system which actually decides which public organization or political party to recognize and register. It's not a governmental affair. And politically, for me, it would not be any problem if this organization would be registered by the Bulgarian court, because then it would prove in the elections how little influence it has on Bulgarian citizens. Then there is a question on Bulgarian and Russian relations. First of all, you should be aware that history matters a lot in modern politics as well. And I always give the example, comparing Bulgaria to other countries of Central and Eastern Europe, the differences in history. There are plenty of reasons for Poles or Czechs or Hungarians to dislike Russia. Historically, I mean, the Poles have occupied Moscow in 1612. The Russians divided Poland in the 18th century and occupied a very substantial part of it, etc. In 1849, the Russian forces suppressed the Hungarian Revolution. I shall not go into the 20th century because there are even more reasons for dislike and hatred, perhaps. In Bulgaria, it's a different story. For 500 years, we lived under an Ottoman domination and rule, a very autocratic empire. And all Bulgarians were expecting that our freedom will come from the north, from our Christian brothers, which actually happened after 1876 uprising, which was bloodily suppressed by the Ottoman regime. Dozens of thousands of Bulgarians were massacred. And then, as a consequence of the 11th Russian-Turkish War of 1877-1878, Bulgaria received its independence. And we cannot forget it. Something more, actually, it's quite interesting and paradoxical that The Russian administration, which was running the country before the establishment of Bulgarian authorities for 1 year, produced and supported Bulgaria to have one of the most democratic constitutions, which was copying the Belgian model in 1878, and many other issues. And even during Soviet times, we didn't have Russian military bases or forces in Bulgaria. So this is just history. And this is a precondition that Bulgarians culturally understand Russians perhaps better and do not have the historical reasons to dislike Russia. It doesn't mean that Bulgaria, as sometimes it was accused, I mean, I've heard that Bulgaria is the Trojan horse of Russia in the European Union and NATO. Bulgaria is the Turkish Trojan horse. Bulgaria is, I don't know who else's Trojan horse is. We are good Europeans sharing our common values, sharing our common priorities in NATO and in the European Union, but I believe that Bulgaria can be an additional good contributor for the dialogue between NATO, the European Union and Russia, because without this dialogue, neither our community nor Russia, I believe, can be successful. And I'm satisfied, I must say, with the tone, with the atmosphere of the last NATO-Russia summit, which happened in Bucharest, because there was this sense and understanding that even when we disagree on one issue or another, we have to talk to each other. We have to look for reasonable solutions, because no one needs a new volume of a renewed Cold War, I would say. And we have learned as a country also to have active economic relations with Russia without giving concessions which do not coincide with our economic or political interests. My impression is that when we have this dialogue with Russia, we manage to find two reasonable solutions, as it was, for example, with Southern Stream signature. It was not easy negotiations for Bulgaria, because naturally Bulgaria has one interest, Russia has different interests about the proportion in the company to construct and many other issues. But I think we made it well, not only for Bulgaria, but also for our European partners, considering these interests and respecting, of course, the interests of Russia as a partner in this project.
We have time maybe for a couple of more questions. I'll have that one on that side and one over here.
Alex Pimenov, Voice of America, Russian Service. Mr. Prime Minister, Bulgaria has joined the Western world. On the other hand, as you mentioned, the historical ties between Bulgaria and Russia are very well known. So my question is that, as we all know today, the U.S. administration conducts a policy aiming to the diversification of energy resources in the Black Sea area. Meanwhile, the Russian government in many cases uses energy resources as a political tool. Could you please characterize the Bulgarian attitude regarding this issue? Thank you.
Thank you. And one last question, then the Prime Minister will answer both. And
Great. Thank you very much. I'm Jim Rosapep. I was U.S. Ambassador to Romania under President Clinton. I wanted to ask about Macedonia and Turkey in relation to expansion of the European Union, because your answer was very fluid on the issue of the Greeks and the Macedonians negotiating. And it is an issue between them, it is an issue for neighboring countries like Bulgaria, but it's also an issue for NATO. It's NATO that Macedonia did not join at Bucharest. Mm-hmm. And the issue of expansion of NATO and then potentially the European Union is something of broad concern to the United States as well as the other members of the Union. I'd just be interested in your perspective as a Bulgarian on long-term the importance or lack of importance of solving the Macedonian issue in terms of NATO and EU membership, and similarly Turkey in the context of the EU.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for both questions. First, on diversification of energy resources. I think it's a very important part of the new European energy policy, and it's quite natural. We're looking for security in our energy supply, because without a stable supply of energy, neither country can develop successfully in the modern world. My approach, which I have always shared during our European councils and meetings, should be very pragmatic. And we should make an analysis. What quantity of energy the European Union will require in the next 15, 20, 30 years? What is the prognosis? And how we can provide this quantity of energy? From what kind of sources? Traditional sources which exist on the territory of our nations, like thermal power plants, but it is questionable from the point of view of CO2 emissions. Renewable, of course, and we have our common commitments, but we should be aware, will it be enough? Even if we reach 20% of renewables by 2020, which is a very high threshold for all of us, will it be sufficient? From my point of view, nuclear energy is unavoidable, as discussion in the European Union, and Bulgaria has made its choice not only to preserve nuclear energy but also to develop it, because this is part of our energy security and independence. By the way, it's much more environment friendly than thermal plants, and becoming more and more secure. And this is part of our debate in the European Union. And of course, the external supply of oil, gas, other sources of energy. And Bulgaria on this issue is very pragmatic. We are looking, of course, for diversification, because at the current, first of all, oil, of course, is an international commodity. Once it's in the ocean, it's available to everyone. It's up to the price in the end. And the other issue is, of course, the gas supplies. And, of course, we are looking for diversification of supply to Bulgaria, although I must recognize that we have steady supplies from Russia. Just 1 year and a half ago, we negotiated for almost a year, again, not easy negotiations with Gazprom, about supplies until 2030 and about transit through Bulgarian territory until 2030 through the existing Bulgarian infrastructure. And I already mentioned the South Stream project. This is also part of diversification, because if you look at the analysis of how much gas the European Union will require, it will require both Nabucco and South Stream. This is the economic analysis. The issue is to provide enough quantities of gas which will fill these tubes in the end and bring the necessary gas to European partners. I consider both projects very important. Just recently our Minister of Economy and Energy was in Azerbaijan negotiating additional gas supply, about 1 billion cubic meters from this country. But here we face also the issue that we need infrastructure to be constructed to deliver this gas to my country. We are also discussing with a number of partners liquid terminals which to be constructed in the Mediterranean, in the Aegean, which could have another diversification issue. But again, to be precise, in the Bulgarian case, we haven't witnessed using from Russia, using the gas issues and the gas supply as a political tool. Not in our case. We've had, as I said, sometimes difficult negotiations, but constructive in the end. It took us a long time to negotiate, but with mutual respect it comes to successful final. Then the issue of enlargement, and in particular towards the Republic of Macedonia and Turkey. I already mentioned in my initial words that we are strongly supporting enlargement, both of NATO and the European Union towards the Western Balkans. And without this perspective, without concrete actions, both of the North Atlantic Alliance and the European Union, there will be no stability in the region. And I said that it's not an easy process. I mean, the European Union has its own turbulences. To be very open, Bulgaria, before joining the European Union, was monitored in a much stricter way than the countries from the first wave of the fifth enlargement. Like with a microscope. Just one example, in 2006, just in February and March, we had 60 missions of the European Union. Then another 60 in the autumn, etc. They were following every detail of public life, of the institutions. You cannot cheat the European Union. And of course, the countries who want to join should not count simply on political decisions. They should make their homework, their business, as Bulgaria did. It was a hell of a work. And we are still continuing this work because it's not completely accomplished. You cannot become, a country with 20 years of democracy cannot become Norway or Sweden in 2 decades in our mentality and public relations. It takes time. It takes efforts in order to come to the fruitful results. But we are definitely supporting. You know that the European Union is negotiating with 2 countries, Croatia and Turkey, on their accession. On the Croatian issue, I think that we can expect this country very soon to join not only NATO but also the European Union in a very visible perspective. In Turkey, there are a number of issues which are not resolved in reality, and this is an open-ending debate because to join the European Union means to share all the values and the standards. And sometimes on many issues, Turkish politicians are not ready yet. And this is why the negotiations are focused on these parts and these chapters which are understandable and on which there is indeed enough common ground. And again, on the Republic of Macedonia, I think indeed the leadership of this country should realize that together with Greece and with the assistance of the NATO allies, and mainly the United States as the leading country in the alliance, they have to come to terms which are reasonable and mutually acceptable. Because playing, so to say, nationalist cards, like some Macedonian politicians saying, no changes of the name, we shall go to a referendum, which will, of course, emotionally stop any changes, will create political instability in the country because of the sizable Albanian minority which has strong political representation. And the stability of the Republic of Macedonia is a key issue. Now, in order to guarantee it, this country has to continue its Euro-Atlantic perspective. And Bulgaria is strongly supporting it. Although, sometimes we witness that in the public opinion of this Western neighbor of Bulgaria, sometimes, although we have been the most friendly country, I would say, we are the first to recognize the Republic of Macedonia as an independent state. In 1999, we signed a declaration of the principles of our attitudes in all fields on the good neighborly relations. Sometimes I witness, as a Bulgarian citizen, a very anti-Bulgarian campaign on many issues. Although the Republic of Macedonia needs more friends nowadays than adversaries or someone else. So do not look for they should not look for their identification through confrontation with someone else. This would be my humble advice in order to provide Euro-Atlantic perspective for this country. And perhaps that would be, although there could be many more comments on most of the issues. And one final remark on the very first question, which was about different influences in Bulgaria. No, sometimes I face people from the European Union saying, well, there are illicit Russian business influences and interests in Bulgaria. And no, it's not you. It's not you. It was another example.
Yeah.
And I say, where they are. In Bulgaria, in the last 3 years, we have 15 billion euro of foreign direct investments. And I ask, who are the investors? Mainly European countries. The overall volume of Russian investments is about 400 million euro in the course of 18 years. and compare it to the 3.5 billion euro from Austria, or 1.3 billion dollars from the United States, and more investments to come. So sometimes, you know, there is mythology on many issues, which is very easy to attach to someone, to declare, but very difficult to prove, and very difficult to find the arguments. Thank you very much for very interesting questions.
Yep.
I'm really inspired.
Let's
A dialogue, but as I'm
thank the
aware-
Prime Minister very much. He's been very generous with his time.